Hi, Hannah. Thank you for hanging out with me today. We're very happy to talk about you and your story and hear a little bit more about Heart Charged. If you don't mind sharing a little bit about your story and how Heart Charged came to be as a nonprofit, we would love to hear it.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm Hannah Kime, born and raised Miami, Florida. I'm a heart patient. I was diagnosed when I was 14 with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy or HCM. That is a heart condition in which the left ventricle of your heart becomes too thick, so that obstructs blood flow. Also, your like fibers on a line, so it causes your heart to be irregular. And you usually hear this condition when you hear, um, like in the news, when an athlete suddenly drops dead on the field. That's it.
Mm.
Or if you ever hear somebody say, "Oh, I have a big heart medically," or a thick heart that's, considered HCM.
Hmm.
And I only found out through family history when my aunt earlier that year found out she had that condition, and then she told my mom because I'm one of 9 kids.
Hmm.
So because sometimes HCM is, genetic. We're like, oh, okay, there could be a good chance. I had had some, fainting episodes. My mom, like, out of all the kids at home, was like, oh, I really have a feeling, let's get you. It was hard to get an appointment because my
Yeah.
pediatrician dismissed us, was like,
Mhm.
fainting's normal. I listen with my stethoscope. No, I don't really think you have a heart problem. So we bypassed the referral. So it took even longer. And then I go in, find out I have it. I have it severe enough where they tell me I need to stop all physical activity. I had just been
Wow.
playing, on 2 basketball teams. I was dancing in school, out of school. I had just started my freshman year. So that was changed my whole life, the directory of that, of, being told a lot of no's, 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 and you should be
Yeah.
grateful you're still here because you could have easily dropped dead with how thick your heart is. Um, and then a week later, because my mom pleaded for some more appointments for my family, my older sister found out she had it, not as severe, but then she was monitored because she had just dropped out of her senior year to study professionally with Miami City Ballet, which is a very big, renowned dance
Hmm.
studio, dance company. So, her life was a lot more of, okay, I still want to do this thing I can, but I don't want people obviously to look at me like, "Oh, whoa, wait, what do you mean you have, a familial heart
Yeah.
condition?" Um, and then my life looked like, "Okay, I have to tell people because I cannot do things that, yesterday or 2 weeks ago people saw me doing." But
Yeah.
when we looked up our condition, all we found was kids dying from sports we played,
Uh,
so we very much began to advocate and do what we could. Me and my sister both have implanted defibrillators. So basically, shocks your heart back into a normal rhythm. Mine saved my life when I was 17, when
Crazy.
I went into, cardiac arrest in my sleep. So easily would not be here if I didn't have that simple device. Um, we like to say we're bionic babes, to feel good about having scars
Yeah.
and, bionic bulges. And it was after she got hers implanted that we're like, what if we really utilize the power of social media and just make a page garnered towards heart conditions, especially in young
Mhm.
people, and we just start sharing our story and see where that leads. And that definitely grew to a level. We obviously knew other people were out there. We knew there was a need. I don't think we really fully grasped that.
Mhm.
So we started as an Instagram page at Heart Charged, and then a year within that, we became an official 501(c)(3) nonprofit,
Mhm.
to give us some young girls legitimacy of like, what are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish?
Mhm.
But we pretty much have like a twofold mission of ending preventable deaths from undiagnosed conditions and sudden cardiac arrest and patient to patient support. And we've really seen the beauty of being able to connect, with a global audience and reach people that don't have resources right there in their community or even know about them
Yeah.
through the power of social media.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I love the positive twist on the story because, like, I've heard your story and I've heard your sister's story. We've known each other for a couple years and followed nonprofit to nonprofit and personal lives, and it's it's so crazy to hear you tell it again, like, really to hear how at such a young age too, like, feeling that vulnerability, getting dismissed, you're thrust into this medical system, not as an adult, as a child who is at the mercy of adults, whether that's your parents and or the medical system, and your whole life just got upended. And you have to navigate changing your life, changing your activities, trying to understand like what you're now living with. I mean, you were old enough to understand, but you're still a kid. You still have pieces that, you I don't know. It feels so I couldn't imagine, with my diagnosis came as an adult, and that was hard for me to navigate. So whenever I'm talking to somebody who had a diagnosis younger, but you're at that age where you understand but don't understand. You feel like an adult, you're being treated like an adult, you're acting like an adult, but you still are a kid and you're still in that space of like, I need my mom, I need my dad, I need some support. It's just I couldn't imagine what you guys, felt at that point, but it's been beautiful to see what you've done, the campaigns you've run, the awareness that you've gotten. It's still growing. I still see all that growth and the passion that you two have. And I know your whole family, is behind you with this as well. And you've had bits and pieces of your other siblings, playing a part in this as well. And it's just really great to see the growth that you guys have built. It's a beautiful thing in a space where people have such little support sometimes. And I know we had talked previously that as young people and young females, that you tend to be very misunderstood and very dismissed in this system. And I imagine with your own personal story and the people that you've talked to that you're starting to really hear that more and more.
Oh, absolutely. Like this year, one of our campaigns is our misdiagnosed, where we, did the play on like, okay, this is our Miss January, and, like a magazine cover. And it's crazy, because you say, oh, I got it when I was an adult. And then you go like, you hear all these stories because it took women so long. It takes, statistically women longer to get a diagnosis because, especially in the heart space, like, heart disease is the number one killer of women. It's also of men,
Hmm.
but it's not seen as that epidemic. We're not given that much, as much funding or even awareness. And I think when
Yeah.
we started out, it was, of course, awareness. But then when we're trying to ask people for donations or tell people, oh my gosh, this thing, they don't see it because the awareness piece is missing and it's not shown as like, wait, you can be born with a heart condition. Oh, wait, young people have this.
Hmm.
Oh, look at this. So there was a lot of like, whoa, there is a lot of awareness that's so much needed in this space to be able to bring, that to the public and get people
Yeah.
because people were dying from this and not knowing because, oh, yeah, it's asymptomatic. And you're like the first sign cannot be death. There has to be things. And then,
Yeah.
we realized that in us, like, wait, no, there was warning signs. Oh, wait, I do remember my heart beating really, really fast, like, and
Hmm.
feeling off. And so that's also one of the campaigns too of just simply telling people about like the warning signs and things like that. And we even made like stickers, so if we go and teach like young people like, hey kids, like
Hmm.
here's a sticker, like remember the things. And like, but it's hard, to feel, especially when no one's taking you serious, you
Yeah.
start to gaslight yourself. And I think that's such, it's heartbreaking. That is a common thread between women, to
Hmm.
be able to, like, hear, like, "Oh, we have you check into the psych ward before we even do a
Yeah.
cardiac workup." And you're like, "Wait, wait, wait. So you think something like, why isn't that just in the standard care? Like, how about we just put that off the table? And if it's,
Hmm.
me, now I know better." But I think, yeah, there's so much that has to be changed in that healthcare system.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where, like, patient organizations, we make up in that need of just helping and supporting other patients. But then we're also, like, underfunded of, like, okay, we're making up in the parts that, like, being there for people, like, we
Yep.
work 7 days a week,
Yep.
like, patient life doesn't take a hold. So it's,
Yep.
like, being there for people, and then people just think, like, "Oh, you're just 2 young girls, like, on social media." and you're like, "Ah, yeah, we're just, yeah, 2 girls on social media. Yeah, we have no actual, haven't saved people's lives, haven't helped people." Yeah.
Yeah, so you're gaslit in a nonprofit and gaslit as a patient. It's great, isn't it? Yeah, it's so, so crazy that no matter who I talk to, no matter what disease state, and most of the people that we've communicated with, they tend to be female, and that's just the nature, I think, of autoimmune diseases and chronic diseases, and in the social media space is primarily women. Not always, but primarily women, and everybody has the same story. Everybody has the same story. It doesn't matter if we're talking neurological, if you're talking cardiac, if you're talking gastric. Like, there's been people in our camp who've, they have gastroparesis. They've been through all of these symptoms for so long. And someone's like, "Are you sure you're just not picky?" Like, but to what you said before, like, why is that the first thing? Like, why is the dismissal the first thing that you're thinking of? Why not just do the damn workup? You're gonna have to do it anyway. So why not just do that first? And if nothing comes from that, then you can do something else. But rule out what I'm actually here for first. Take me seriously, because what you said struck me a lot. And I know you had said it before that like the first symptom can't be death. So like if that is the first there's no coming back from that. So there's no change, there's no chance. So if someone's telling you something, "This is hurting me, this is bothering me," like, take it seriously the first time because you can prevent somebody's death. And if you don't do that, maybe you're not in the right profession, but that's not for me to decide.
That's a whole other, yeah, you're like, "What is your why? Why are you here?" "I'm here
Yeah.
because 'cause I'm in pain. Why are you what?"
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's something. And, the misconceptions, I think, especially for young females, feels so much higher than it is for adult females. And I say that only because from my own experience and other people's stories that they've shared, it's like when you're younger, you don't have that credibility yet. So then when you are showing symptoms and you're talking about your symptoms and you're talking about what you're feeling because you're younger and it's like you're just not reliable yet, you're questioned even more. And I can imagine, especially at your age when you were diagnosed, that you guys hit some of that. You mentioned the fainting, and someone says, "Well, I listened and like that's normal." No, it's not. Like, in what world is that normal?
No, I
I
still
know.
I still even seeing, like, I've seen multiple cardiologists having moved, and also then the doctors leave and go somewhere else, and you're like, and I even still get, like, gaslit today by people where you're like, "Okay, I thought I could trust you, and you're also trying to test me about things of like, well, how could you have experienced this arrhythmia? It only shows your on your transmission was 3 seconds." Like, "Well, how do you know? Because you haven't, you
Yeah.
know?" So it is a thing of, like, I think like, we become experts in living with it, and I think that,
Mhm.
like, doctors need to respect you in that aspect of, like, you are
Yeah.
living with this every day, and I think, like, I was just at this, like, global conference where we were talking about women's equity in cardiovascular health, and, like, I was speaking on a panel about communicating and using social media to women. Was I the youngest panelist there? Yes, I I was in my late 20s, and I think it does because you hear these women's stories and you hear like these misdiagnosed going over even like decades and decades of their life and you realize they were young women once. So it is
Mhm.
weird, like not saying women don't then when like, oh, it's menopause or you add all these other things or oh, you're pregnant or like you add in all this other stuff in their life. But it is sad that like, oh, even when you're younger, you can go this whole long time, like
Mhm.
thankfully that you haven't dropped dead because somebody's
Yeah.
incompetence or not understanding or taking you seriously. And it goes from a lot. Like we did a campaign called think cardiomyopathy where we collaborated from like EMS personnel, ER, like all these people because it is true. I could go to the ER, be dismissed. I could go
Mhm.
to my general practitioner, be dismissed. I could even go to, you know, not to scare anybody, like I could go to cardiologist and they could like, misdiagnose or maybe not even take me seriously. But
Yeah.
it's like it's hard to think, people already get nervous about wanting to go to the doctors. Women were so good at like internalizing pain. Like we have a way
Mhm.
higher pain tolerance. So it's like hard, but like building people, empowering them, like, okay, come on, like we have to fight through this. But that's what's hard is like there is so many barriers that you could easily get dismissed. But our mission is to end preventable deaths. And
Mhm.
like how can we prevent it on our end of okay, no, you need to take women seriously. Yeah, why not just do this workup? But it is, especially being young, because they're like, well, that's not typical. Like we've gotten, I think that is one of the myths, not only in the public eye, because heart disease has been shown so much through like media as a
Yep.
older person, old man's disease. It's
Mhm.
only a heart attack. You just clench your chest, your left arm starts tingling like that. Like, okay, that there's more than just heart attacks in the heart space. And we haven't
Yeah.
even fully, I don't think people have grasped all of that yet because the media just shows you no, this
Yeah.
side, and then it's like, "Hey, actually, um, what actually kills people is sudden cardiac death, and that can happen to anybody, any age, anywhere, any physical condition you're in." And
Mhm.
so there is so much myth busting in the heart space. They're like, "Okay, wait, kids can be born with this. Okay, kids can
Yeah.
like mask and be like, oh, well, this is my normal. I don't know
Mhm.
what's normal for a typical person my age. Oh, well, I ran. Of course, my heart's beating fast. Oh, that's too
Yep.
fast. Didn't know there was a too fast. You know, no one
Yeah.
ever like really does it. So even in like the kids are like, hey, how do you take someone and not letting that bias of gender, of age, of race when I come in to see you that you're treating, my pain, you're treating what I'm complaining about. And people even use excuse like, well, women, explain their symptoms different or they downplay it. Like, okay, but why is always the onus on the woman? Like, well, you need to speak better if you want to be taken more
Mhm.
seriously. Like, okay,
Mhm.
well, how about you as a doctor know that, right? Like, I could describe fainting different than another person, but in the end, we kind of all have the same foundation of, okay, so my vision starts to go, I'm hearing ringing, I'm feeling hot, okay, I black out. Like, we all at the end, have the same end result. But,
Yeah.
if I'm a creative person, I might flourish it and describe it in a different way. But yeah, they try to be like, well, you should do this. And I don't know, as a patient, you kind of get like, there can only be so much onus on the patient. Like, we are the
Yeah.
ones living with it. And as much as I can empower patients, I also, like, the doctors need to be like taught better. They need to
Mhm.
actually, learn about how women's symptoms sometimes can be different than men's. They need to see that, okay, age should not be a consideration for diseases. Like,
Mhm.
unless there's actually, statistical proof. But yeah, there is a lot of like re-education or better education that needs to go and, not just let it all be on the patient of you need to be better,
Yeah.
equipped. Like, of course I can be better equipped, but if the doctor doesn't listen to me,
It
I am
doesn't matter.
screwed. This is
Yeah.
a two-way thing. Like, I do need to be treated. And then people get
Mhm.
upset, like, well, did you go on oh, you Googled it or you went on social media and you saw TikTok and you're like, okay, so when did a patient's lived experience not be a credible source? Because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, let me go to Mayo Clinic website, do it. It's like, I've read some stuff on there that's like, that's what you're saying about my condition, but no offense. I don't see anybody's images. I'm just seeing symptoms. I'm just seeing
Mhm.
things. It is a credible source to be a patient living with it. Of course, yes, there's fake news or people do things, but it's really not, especially in the patient space, there's not as much as that. And it is upsetting when we're in conversations with people that they kind of I think if they don't really understand the power of social media, they want to downplay it and be like, well, there's all this misinformation. It's like, okay, so give us some funding. Let's start pushing more better
Yeah.
information there. Then like that's your only excuse. Like, well, there's stuff happening that's like, actually, I've met so many people who've used social
Mhm.
media to find it. And actually, when I was like doing some research for like my panel, like women are more likely to use the internet, to use
Yep.
social media to find their answers because surprise, they're being undiagnosed, they're not
Yeah.
getting their answers in the medical space, so they're going to the internet, they're trying to inform themselves so that when they go
Mhm.
to the doctor, they can ask better questions to know, "Oh, could it be this? Could it be that?" So, yeah, there definitely needs to be a little bit more value to, I think, the patient experience and the people who are advocating
Absolutely.
and sharing it in this space.
I couldn't have said any of that any better. Like, that patient lived experience, like, I have a couple different rare diseases, and I remember, one of them is hypoparathyroidism, and it for me was a surgical complication from my total thyroidectomy. And, like, because it's rare, like, in my world, it's not rare because I know a lot of different people who have it. So it feels like there's a lot of people surrounding me, right? But there there's not that many of us. And when you go to a doctor, an endocrinologist to treat the disease, it's like they know it exists, but because they may never have seen it before, they don't know how to treat it. So when you're talking about like that patient, that lived experience, and they're like, well, I'm like, stop, hold on, toss the book. Listen to what I have to say because my lived experience is going to outweigh anything that you are going to read in your textbook. Some of that might still be true. It might hold some weight, but it does not hold a higher weight than my lived experience. And there have been times where I've been in the doctors or maybe the hospital, and they come in with lots of different people. You've got nurses who are being trained, you've got residents, fellows, your like doctors of all different levels. And when they bring in medical students, they're like, "Do you mind?" I'm like, "Absolutely, bring them in. Let me tell them what this is really like because they may never meet somebody again with this disease. I will sit there and tell you anything you want to know. Anything you want to know because I want the next time if you meet somebody who is like me, whether it's my disease state or whether it's something similar of an experience, I want you to be better. I want you to treat them better. I want you to hear them and not just say, well, you're too young for that, so we're not going to test for it. What? Like that's not a good reason to not look for something just because you're female, you're young, or whatever reason insert here that you want to use to deny what I'm telling you. And there's so many people in the GI community in that same space and in that same situation where you're like, why aren't you listening to me? This is what I'm telling you. Well, that's not possible. But it happened. You can't tell me that my lived experience isn't possible. You can't tell me that this isn't real. And I know that I try very hard not to Google too much when I start having symptoms, mostly because I know that I can make something fit even if it doesn't fit, right? Because you're looking for something, you want answers, you don't feel good, you're not getting them from your medical team. So you're going to social media, you're going to the internet. And I'm like, recently I've been having weird things happen and I'm just like keeping track of it, right? Because I'm like, I don't I don't want to get inside my own head and, start to have a catastrophe go on. But if you don't get answers from your medical team or you can't get in to see anybody for what, 3, 6, 9 months, a year plus because their doctors are retiring, doctors are burnout, they're overworked, so you're not getting into them. By the time you're getting into them, you're either maybe not flaring the way that you were, or maybe it's not happening anymore, or you're that much worse that like you can't even verbalize what's been going on because an entire year has gone by and you're like, how do I even put into words what's going on? I don't even know how to ask you for help. And then if you can't put the words out in a way that they understand or they need to hear, you're screwed. You're screwed. And I've had some fantastic medical providers over the years. I've had some okay medical providers over the years, and I've had some not good medical providers over the years. And I've realized that in that conversation, I have to be like strong enough to stand my ground, but also the second smartest person in the room because my lived experience, as much as I know what my lived experience is, I need whoever I'm speaking to come to terms with my lived experience and not try to change it or challenge my lived experience. So I have to sometimes hold back what I want to share in my um like advocacy for myself and being firm and assertive, but not aggressive. And as a female, we have to think about this twice as much because you don't want to be too smart, but you don't want to be too dumb. You want to be put together, but not too put together because then they won't believe that you don't feel good. But if you're really not put together, then why you don't feel good is blamed on the fact that you don't take care of yourself. But if you are too smart, then you're just spending too much time on the internet. You're spending too much time on social media. Oh, you're diagnosing yourself with that TikTok disease. But if you go in not smart enough, then they're like, well, you just don't understand what's happening to you. So in what situation do we come out of this actually taken care of?
No, and then you get there and you're like, "Oh, yeah, A through Z, am I screwed?" Like, okay, is that the there is some great doctors and it's hard to find, and I obviously know, like, in the US, depending on insurance,
Mhm,
you do have the option to be like, "You know what? I'm gonna, like," I was hearing this, I'm like, "I fired my doctor." And there's part of me like, "You know what? Like, screw you, like, why am I listening?" But it's true, like, in a society, we've built up, you are the expert, right? The doctor, like, "Ooh, this is approved by a doctor." Like, "Oh, that should hold weight." And I think in this sense of this new patient, especially for, like, our generations and, like, younger, is like we want to be informed, and I think
mhm,
doctors aren't quite equipped, and I think they're slowly understanding that
mhm,
like like an informed patient is the best patient. Like, I'm living with this, I do want to know, I want to know
yep,
exactly how fast my heart was beating, because that makes me go, okay, so that's the activity I was doing, I felt like crap doing that, so won't do that. Like, you're not with me 24/7 as a doctor, so if you want me to be a good patient and
mhm,
take my meds and do it, like, I want to understand why. And because, grew up with the internet and having all these answers in it, yes, I am hoping that my disease, I can fully understand it or know how best to
yeah,
live with it. So it is hard, like, and I'm the same way, like, I'll tell people, like, track it, because, like you were saying, like, oh, you're not flaring as much. And in the heart space, like, your heart could be beating, like, off, but then it's like, okay, I didn't catch it, right? Like, I don't
mhm,
have a way to monitor. And I think that's where, like, at home monitoring things like that, like, for the future would be helpful. It's like, okay, more than just taking my blood pressure, like, okay, like, that's why heart monitors are great. But, like, I finally heard a doctor say, a pediatric cardiologist, because, well, me and my sister were saying, like, sometimes even wearing a heart monitor for 2 weeks, like, sometimes you put on that monitor and your heart's like, I'm not gonna act up just
yeah.
because you're wearing this. So then you're like, screw, dang, I wore it for 2 weeks, so I want to wear it for a whole month. Like, for me, if I wear enough, my heart will show and that stuff. But for other people who's not as, at that level yet of
Mhm,
severity or not having it, he was like, oh no, I'll keep putting it on until we get more stuff. I'm like, I've never heard a doctor say that. And then you think of
mhm,
insurance when they're like, why are you doing another one? We just gave you a heart monitor. And you're like, oh
yep,
my gosh, like, if my doctor's, requesting this, and that is a whole other space of like, hey, I'm trying to get the best information for me to do it, instead of just going, well, we did it once. And then you're like, no, but I know I felt something off. How are you catching those moments? And I think that's sometimes hard when you live with a disease that's like, yeah, depending on the day you go into the doctor's, like, I hate the question, like, how are you? I don't know. I have a chronic incurable condition. Like, what do you think? Yeah, but then you're like, I'm doing good, because, like, yeah, for me, good means something different. Or you're just like,
yes,
yeah, I'm just chilling, doc. Like,
yep,
I'm not, if I'm feeling really bad, I'll tell you. But mostly I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm
mhm,
doing fine. That it's like, I don't even know why they ask that. Cause you're like, you know why
yeah,
I'm here? Cause we got to treat
yeah,
this condition, you know? Like, it's
yeah,
not your regular doctor, like, yeah, I was feeling, my stomach, like, maybe I have the flu, like that. It's like, I'm coming here every 3 months, every 6 months.
it's not
Yeah,
for
I'm doing
fun.
okay. Yeah, yeah. You're like, is this small talk? Do you really care? Also, if I change my answer, is that going to change the next question you ask me? Probably not,
Yeah, yeah, I
But
know, It's really like we laugh because it's that same thing, that camaraderie of like we have all been there as a patient when you're sitting there, you walk in, they're like, "Hi, how are you today?" And sometimes I'm just like, "I'm alive. That's all I got. I'm here. I showed up. Like, that's it." And I've had other times where I'm like, I'm doing actually pretty decent right now. Here's what's been going on. And then I have other times where I'm like, real bad. Happen to have an appointment like in the middle of something flaring. And I sit there and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be as honest as I possibly can right now. And I lay it all out and I see them scribbling down notes and they're writing everything. And I'm sitting here like, okay, so what are we going to do? They're like, all right, I'll see you in 3 months. I'm like, why did you ask? Like, if you really didn't want the answer and if you weren't going to offer me any solution or test or even, I'm sorry that's happening for you, why did you ask? And why did I come here? Because all I did was spill my guts to you and tell you everything that's going on, basically begging you and telling you, like, I feel so horrible right now. Everything hurts. I can't keep food down. Like, I'm so fatigued that I can't function. My brain fog is really bad. Did you see my last labs? Like, they lit up like a Christmas tree. This did not look pretty. Here's how I'm feeling. What are we going to do? And, right in a way, yeah, well, the exit's right there. It's, down the hall to the left and sat for 3 months. I'm like, thanks, doc. And that in itself makes it harder the next appointment in 3 months to be honest. So you go in, they ask you how you're feeling, and maybe you don't give that level of detail. You're like, I don't feel great, but like you said, chronic condition. So it didn't go away. I'm here, aren't I? But I don't really feel that great. It's like the next time something happens, they'll say, well, I didn't know it got that bad. Like, you never told me because you got to a point where you just are like, I don't even know what to say anymore. And it's like, how do you fix that? What do you do? Where's the communication barrier here? Did I say something in a way that you didn't understand? Did you not hear what I had to say? Are you so burnt out that like it's just not clicking for you too? Like, how do we fix that? There's there's really no answer there. I mean, I don't know how to find one, but I know that you've probably been through that. Your sister's probably been through that. Anybody listening to this is probably going to say, yeah, I've been there. Where they're like, oh, I didn't know you didn't feel good.
Or
Okay.
they're like you're like, "Oh, I feel things," right? Where it's like, "Oh, I felt like I had this," like, "Oh, I felt like, oh, this is what an arrhythmia feels like." And then
Mm-hmm.
they'll say like, "Oh, you know, here's like, because I have ventricular tachycardia and supraventricular tachycardia, because
Mm-hmm.
we love big words in the heart space. And it's like basically where your heart's, what part of the heart is beating, and like supraventricular tachycardia, SVT, is not as serious, so I don't feel that as much. So then they'll be
Okay.
like, oh, well, you had like 8 episodes of that, and you're like, wait, what the heck? When? I was like, I didn't feel that. And then I'll come to them and be like, no, I know I had an arrhythmia this time, and then they're looking, and then someone will be like, I've had where, because the doctor's like, well, she was a little bit like older, like she was like, oh no, I didn't see anything. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, I know. I've been doing this for over a decade. Do know. I know my body. I was like,
Uh-huh.
well, I'm going to still count that because I've experienced enough and have the results. And then she was like, oh no, she did have something. I'm like, girl, don't be trying to, but it isn't, if you don't feel heard, you want to stop talking. And like,
Yep.
that's even in your normal life, right? Like, if you have friends, like, nobody's listening to you as much. I can go talk to myself in the mirror. Like, I do need, in this sense, I need you to listen to me or feel
Mm-hmm.
like I'm being listened to, because even you could tell your doctor, and then if you go look at your records, and then you're like, oh, that's what they thought of what I
Mm-hmm.
said. Like, oh,
That's
patient
always a fun
complains
game.
of, or like me and my sister, like, I will get emotional in almost every appointment, even though I've
Yeah.
been at this for this long. But then I think, and I also think, like, I think you need a care team, and I think
Mhm.
as much as we patient organizations like can be there for patients, like I don't have like a degree in psychology. Like
Mhm.
we like talk about the mental health, like when you get a diagnosis, when you've had years of not being listened to, like there's a lot of trauma that's in you. Like when we
Yeah.
think, oh, of course I'm going to be emotional. The first appointment I had with a cardiologist, my whole life changed. Like I didn't hear very good news except, well, you're still here. And you're like,
Mhm.
oh, I didn't think I couldn't be here at 14. Like, oh, okay, hold on. That's a lot to
Yeah.
process. And
Yeah.
so then especially like we've had with like in our experience with male doctors, like, well, we would be known at this one office, like, oh, the sisters who always cry. And it's like, well, no offense, I'm on the edge because I don't know what you're going to tell me, right?
Mhm.
Like, is this, even if it's good news, okay, I'm so relieved. I'm crying. And
Yeah.
it's upsetting that, like, oh, because I'm crying, you don't want to worry me. It's like, but I still can process information. Like, please tell me the information I want to know. I don't need to go track and find things out. But it is upsetting. You can go to an appointment, like
Mhm.
following up an appointment, maybe that like I recently had like finding out some things about my condition I never knew, and I'm like, wait, 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 that's a lot. And then no one's
Wow.
giving me the words, no one's giving me a printout to be like, hey, this is where it is. The app you have is not uploading any of my files, so I don't know what the point of this app is for this,
Mhm.
office. And you're like, no, 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 like oh, I'm just gonna see you again in 3 months. Like, no, 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 I still have like a bunch of questions. And it
Yep.
is hard because doctors are overworked. They only have so much time with it. And I think it comes down to like, hey, like make it worth it. Like I don't need you to ask me like, okay, I know there might be a typical question. How are you doing? Okay, let's cut to the chase, doc. I'm here for only
Yeah.
limited time. You're here for limited time. Like, okay, what is this point of it? Like to get it. So, but it is, yeah, it is tricky because you're like, I know you only have so much time. Don't like, but because we're young people, we've had like a lot of times information withheld from us, even being adults. Like, we
Interesting.
don't want to worry you. I don't want to worry you. I'm not going to tell you the exact, but it's like, that's my heartbeat. Like, no offense, that is my information. Like, I would like to know
Oh
how
my
fast because
gosh.
that helps me know, oh,
Yeah.
that's what it feels like beating at 220 beats per minute. Oh, okay. Also,
Mhm.
it's like, I went into cardiac arrest at 256. So I would like to know, hey, that's coming it. But then there'd be
256.
like, hey, you're really like, because I'm getting emotional. I'm sorry, like this is an emotional thing. Like my heart
Mhm.
don't work. So yes, excuse the tears. Like they'll be like, okay, okay. But then they think like, did I say something wrong? Like, well, you did say I might need a transplant. So, like you are saying words that are like, oh, okay, that's a lot. Like that's a lot to process. But yes, I need you to keep talking me. I have somebody else here. So like, please keep
Yeah.
telling me what I need to hear. But then they use the excuse like, well, I don't want to worry you. Like, worry me, you're worrying me more, not telling me. Also, like, that's my right
Yeah.
to know that information. Because how am I going to, again, treat myself when you're not here seeing me for
Mhm.
most of the year? Like, and also, like, I could lie to you too. I mean, the test can't lie. That's where you can get caught. But, like, I could just be like, I'm doing great, doc. Yeah, I'm definitely taking my medication every day,
Mhm.
right? But that's where it gets like, okay, like let's be honest with each other. And that does begin with the respect of when you talk, at least at least pretend you're listening to me,
Yes.
like, and I've had
Pretend to be
doctors,
interested.
yeah. Well, I've even had doctors go, your case is a little bit more like, a lot, so I'm gonna schedule you at the end of the day in the beginning so I can sit with you and really talk with you. And you're
Yep.
like, so it does, like, people are doing good, like, things, like, you make it work. Of course, yes, if you're overworked, can I expect you to treat me like you don't have 100 other patients? But it's
Mhm.
little things like that of going, okay, hey, like, how can we make this work? And there's compromise on both parts of like, okay, let me, be a little more present for you and maybe let me not schedule you in my busiest time because your case is a little bit more complicated and we need to sit
Mhm.
and talk about it.
Yeah, I've had a few of my physicians do that. Recently, I had an appointment and I love this doctor. She does all my IV medication. And when she comes in, I can guarantee you my blood pressure goes down, like, because we're always a little nervous going into any appointment because you just don't know, as we've said, what's going to happen. And she comes in and, like, just her presence, how she talks to you, she wants to know, like, I had on a sweatshirt that, my husband and I had gone to a zoo, and I was like, "Oh, I want a sweatshirt with animals on it." So I bought it at the gift shop, and I was wearing it that day. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, what zoo is that? Where'd you go? Okay, how is it?" Like, so she was asking, "How are you?" but in an interactive way. Like, she actually wanted to know what was my favorite animal that I saw at the zoo. Like, and actually cared about the answer. And like, I know not every doctor is going to be able to give 45 minutes to every patient every day. That's just not possible. But not every patient needs that 45 minutes either. And when I sit down in that room with those providers and I feel like someone's not just hearing my symptoms, but you were talking about mental health too. It's like she wants to know the outside of my medical life too, knowing that that affects what happens to me medically, just like what happens to me medically is going to affect my work life, my personal life, my emotional life, my mental health, all of those things. So she wants to know both of those things. And to be able to have those conversations and to say, like, I walked out of there feeling relief. Like, how often do we walk out of an appointment feeling a sense of relief? It's not super often, you know? And I've been really grateful, especially in the last year, talking to different experts in the GI space and just in the chronic illness space as we've interacted with other disease state organizations and hearing from other providers that they're starting, like, the tides are turning a little bit. It's very slow, but they're hearing us, and I'm feeling like it's more of these providers who are dealing with younger patients who sit outside the typical, like yourself. And you've got chronic illness patients with maybe a couple rare diseases, or you have just complicated diseases to treat. These experts are starting to interact with the patient organizations and getting the patient experience, which is helping tailor how they're treating those patients. And the patients are learning, like, there's doctors like that out there. Like, where do I get me one of those? We get those questions all the time. You know, they're like, how do you find somebody like that? And it's starting to change the more that we talk. And one of the things that our organizations are very similar in, and just us personally and professionally, is that awareness and advocacy, because it all goes back to, what does somebody understand? Because you can't advocate for something if you don't know it exists. So that awareness is always going to be at the core of, like, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. Help me spread the word. And that's something I think no matter what campaign we do, no matter how we do it, it comes back to that, getting that information out there, which is always going to be difficult, but I don't foresee either of us stopping anytime soon. It's
There's too much work to be done. So even there is like the sense of like, even though I say like it, like we were like, if we could save one person's life and like we've
Yeah.
accomplished that goal, like if for some reason it had to stop, I feel like I have no regrets. Like I did everything I could. And like,
Mhm.
I've been advocating since I've been diagnosed. And like, you're like, okay, like I did good. But then you
Mhm.
see there's just so much need and there's just like, and it's like, not saying no, there couldn't be another person doing it, but there's not enough people doing it. There's not
Yeah.
enough resources and stuff. So it's like we've got to come together and we got to collaborate. And there is like that overlap of like, there's just things just as patients that we
Mhm.
deserve, that we all, through all, disease space, like we could be coming together and
Yeah.
advocating for. And then, of course, there are like more specific things like, hey, this needs to be done in this space and that space. But it's like, if one of us succeeds and doesn't, I think there is like the helping each other along the way as we're doing it, because
Yeah.
I feel like in some of these spaces, these older, longer organizations haven't been collaborative. And I think they're realizing the reason they're not having that reach anymore is because it's the time and space to be collaborative, is to like help each other,
Absolutely.
and the more like I don't want to gatekeep all the patients. I hope they can have 12 patient organizations that can
Yeah.
support them in different ways. So I
Mhm.
think people need to realize like this isn't a competition. I mean, sometimes, yes, if we're going for the same grants or funding, that's where things can go. But then it goes, wait, but how is something where we can come,
Together.
together and
Mhm.
do something and make it happen? But I think it does get like, a little bit hard when the resources aren't there. And I think for us, like me and my sister, like we've dedicated like our, if you think our most impressionable years in your life, like we didn't think this was a career. We were just like, right, like I have a passion, like
Mhm.
people are dying, like the things need to change. And then you're like, of course we did things of just like, we want to help people. And then we're like, wait, we need funding. Like we need to be able to keep this going. And it's just like,
Yeah.
hoping that people, especially when you're like, okay, like there's enough dollars to go around, like, from a, like in the patient space. Like, I don't know why we get paid like pennies to the dollar when it's like we're doing so much for so little. And it's like organizations like us, like, if you gave me $3, I'd be like, okay, here's what we could do with
Yep.
$3, like,
We are
I don't
very good
know.
at that.
Yeah, where you're like, so it's like, please, I guess this is the thing of like, when you see small organizations like this, like, there's obviously a reason we were made because we saw that there was a need not being
Yeah.
met. But like, I hope when you donate to like, when I say small, like our reach isn't small, but ours are, the money we use, yes, that's small. Like when you donate to people like us, it's going a lot way further than you donate to like American Heart Association. When you go there, it's like that's funding somebody's, you know, $500,000 salary to do I don't know what. So you're like, it's really the small people that like, that's if you really want to be involved in work and helping people, that's,
Yeah.
where it's at, because it is kind of tiresome when people are like, I'm helping you, I'm donating to this org thing. And you're like,
That's not me.
um, actually, they don't even give much research to my condition or other conditions for young people. Also, I do have my own, and trying to help people in my community around the world,
Yeah.
even just to keep, a website alive does cost money, for
Mhm.
information to be found. So,
Yeah.
for those listening, yeah, if you're in the giving mood, I will say your money does go a lot farther for,
Yeah.
these smaller, even though we're not small,
Mhm.
but,
Yeah,
nonprofits like us, yeah.
you're not wrong, and I know that's why, like, it was important for me, especially in our growth that we've done within the last year and, starting our podcast and expanding some of our programs because we know as a smaller organization that we all can survive if we all are friendly. Like you're in the cardiac space, we're in the GI space. In a lot of ways, somebody might be like, what is this? Like, where's the commonality here? Right? Like, maybe it's not in the symptoms, but maybe it is in the patient experience. And that's exactly what we have proven just by chatting about our experiences today and what our communities experience. And all of us want the same thing. It might not be the same cure, it might not be the same treatment, but we all want the same damn thing is we want to feel better, we want to be treated better, and we need some more research and more awareness. And if we do that collaboratively to find that common denominator, to find those things that we can do to push forward these agendas of just help us get further, help us do more research, help us be able to support patients because I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to come up with a cure for this. But what I can do is support the hundreds of thousands of patients in my community while we're waiting for somebody to do the damn thing, and that is by being a safe space to be supportive in what they're doing, meeting them where they are, giving them a space where they can, like a virtual rage room. You want to come scream about your condition? Welcome. Let's do it collectively. Like, I want to be helpful. G-PACT wants to be helpful. You want to be helpful. Heart Charged as a whole wants to be helpful. We're doing the work as boots on the ground organizations to tell people what we need and ask to be a part of that movement with us. And the more that we collaborate, the more that we talk about it, the more that these conversations happen out loud and not just quietly to each other, but out loud to say, here are these issues. If two completely separate entities are coming together to fight for the same thing, something's going on, you know?
Mm. No, yeah, that's necessarily like, okay, wait, there is a bigger issue of like all these disease spaces, right, are coming. And of course you could be like, oh, we all have chronic illness. Like there is a
Mhm.
lot more, like, we are human at the end of the day. There's a lot of, unfortunately in a broken system, we're all having, similar experiences.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much need in like we're excited, and we're so proud of like what you've done and seeing,
Yeah.
like you taking over this, organization and really leading it. So, and I think also like there's nothing like women supporting women like, hey,
Right?
like you know,
Let's go.
let's go, let's lift each other up and like
Yeah,
do it because yeah, there's so much need for, and there's nothing like patient to patient support too, and I don't think people really
absolutely.
grasp what that means unless you've been there, because I don't even
Mhm.
have the words to express like what it means to find somebody and to have like that hope, you
Yep.
know that you've seen somebody, and not saying I need to see them living a wonderful, lavish, amazing life, even though, yes, that would be great. But like when you can see the reality and realize, oh, there's, shared the sense of like, because this is a painful journey, and to
Mhm.
know that, like, oh, your pain isn't dismissive and that, it's respected and like, hey, but let's
Mhm.
treat it right. Like, what is the best
Yeah.
ways for me to feel emotionally, mentally, physically better? And like, I think for my specific condition, it is an exciting time because a lot of research like has now been and there is a lot of companies doing things from like genetic therapies to better medication. After all these
Mhm.
years, I would actually treat
Finally.
my condition and not just go, let's just lower your blood pressure. I hope that would suppress your
Oh god.
arrhythmias, not quite sure. So it is an exciting time for, for us, but like, not being said like, hey, right, if I'm getting this stuff, right, I can go help you get like, yeah, go, let's advocate, let's help each
Mhm.
other, find the treatments that are needed and get the funding that's necessary for that. But yeah, along the way is like, I think there's always a need for patient organizations
Yeah.
because, this is a lifelong journey and people, need to be supported in that way. But it is hard when people don't value the work, that you're trying to do. But
Yeah.
then it's those messages that you get from one patient that you're like, this is the payment.
Mhm.
It fills your soul in a way, but then it's hard to be like, okay, hold on, because in order to give me like all my time, I'm not working, a full-time job, but then it's like
Mhm.
running this is your whole full time. So you're like, okay, I do need some dollars, to
Yeah.
keep this going as much as,
Yep.
yeah. Don't want to
We
be
could talk
asking for
for
money.
another, like, 3 hours about that topic,
Yeah.
of
No,
what it
literally.
takes to really pull all these things together, and I think one of the biggest things that people forget when you look okay and you are running an organization and essentially doing it on the side, because when this is an organization that you're volunteering your time for and you're not being paid, you have to be paid somewhere else. And to have that conversation and to really say, like, "We look okay, we're functioning," but it's like, we still have to take care of ourselves personally and medically too, and it does get difficult, but I think you said it well before, like, there's that passion there that, like, as much as some days you might need to slow down a little bit, we wanna keep your heart rate and your stress levels down absolutely more than mine, but, you keep going because you know that this is important work, and the more reach that we have, the more conversations that we have, the more people we can bring in to collectively lift us all up and share some of that workload, where it's not as heavy on your shoulders anymore because more people are coming in, more people are talking about it because more conversations are happening, more information is getting out there, and we're really just doing the best that we can. And hopefully, as the years go on and we stay strong and we make more friends, more connections, that it'll maybe get a little easier. Maybe.
Just a little bit,
Just a little.
Don't want to high expectations, but no, it will get a little bit easier for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's so great having friends like you guys. And I so appreciate this. This was a very cathartic conversation for me. Probably one of my favorite pieces of doing the podcast is I'm like, I feel so good after I leave a conversation with somebody because like you said, people, you get it, you don't get it till you get it. And to be able to have conversations with people and then be able to share your passion, your mission with other people, and, what I've gotten out of it to share with our community and the rest of yours. Like, I'm just so grateful that you took the time to share with me today. And, we can't wait to see what is in store for you guys because, we're here to support you and we love you guys, and make sure to say hi to Bethany for me since she couldn't be here today. But thank you again so much. We appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for letting us come on on your space, So we very much appreciate it, and we hope that, yes, like, even if you don't have a heart thing, or if like, please come follow us. We're a community here at Heart Charge, so
Hmm.
the more the merrier. But we really appreciate allowing us to share our thing. I know, and Bethany has to be working, get that good insurance from that
Yeah.
job. Um but no, it's been such a pleasure talking with you, and I hope people, yeah, I know once you get started, we get started. So hopefully you can take something from, this conversation. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.